Well, today we get a live look from spring training with our friend Kevin Henry. We talk about Chris Bryant and Zach Veen. The new look Rockies are in town, and could they possibly exceed expectations in 2026? We'll talk about that and more coming up next on the DNVR Rockies Podcast. That's the one. Big changes here on the Rockies Podcast, and we are live from the Xfinity studio. Oh man, it is a beautiful day to talk about some Colorado Rockies baseball. Welcome into the show, Christian Saez, Big Fly Spence. Can we rename you to Big Fly Spence now that it's baseball season?
Big Fly Spence is ready to rock for
Big Fly Spence is ready to rock. And we've got a special guest on the show, Kevin Henry from the Denver Gazette, who is live currently at spring training. Are we good to go with him, Kale? Let's throw him up there on the screen. Kevin, how are you doing? The weather looks beautiful where you are, my friend.
Hey guys, it is a good day in Scottsdale, Arizona. Hard to beat.
Oh my gosh, I'm a little jealous. It's not snowing here, but it's chilly. It's gotten a little bit colder, so the weather is nicer where you are than it is here. But we've got a lot to talk about, so I want to dive kind of right into it here with you on the show. First of all, right off the top, you had a conversation with Chris Bryant. We saw your post. I saw Thomas Harding was kind of putting out, a thread on the conversation with Chris. He spoke with media today. There wasn't any big announcement. Basically, him just giving his own version of an update. What was the vibe like with that? What did you take away from your conversation with KB?
The vibe to me was more of the same. And I think it was really a way for the Rockies to say, look, we've put him on the 60-day injured list to start the season. And here he is to talk to the media. And now we're not going to talk about this the rest of the season. It was really that take to me that we want to get this out of the way on the first day of camp. We want to make sure that everybody understands what's going on, and we want everybody to understand nothing's really changed, and probably nothing's going to change. So I think that was the biggest thing that they wanted to accomplish today, and they accomplished that goal, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you guys probably asked, is he considering? I don't know who asked the question, but I saw through Thomas Harding's, thread. It was something along the lines of like him weighing whether or not it's worth it to keep going and to keep continuing. What was his kind of? What did it feel like talking to him, and where do you think his mindset was at? Because obviously it's a tough spot for him to be at. His back hurts, chronic pain is very real. But where was he at mentally through all of this?
And I think that's the thing we've got to remember is that whenever we're talking about this, it's not just that he can't swing a bat or catch a fly ball. It's that he said today, I can't reach for a tube of toothpaste. It's just the everyday stuff. He told us today, if his feet hit the floor, it hurts. And I think that's what we've got to take away from this is that, yeah, Rockies fans want to see this guy play baseball. He's being paid to play baseball. But there's the human side of it, and I think that's the biggest thing right now that they're trying to figure out with Chris Bryant is how's he going to play with his kids? How's he going to bend over to put on his shoes? I think that's where they're at with Chris Bryant at the moment, and really the treatment isn't about swinging a bat or anything else. It's literally about how do they get this pain to go away so maybe they can even think about that down the road. But I think it's much more about treating Chris Bryant the human than it is the baseball player right now.
Yeah, and the last kind of question that I had on the KB side of things, because I don't want to spend a ton of time on KB because, like you said, there's nothing new coming out of this. We're just hearing it from him. But was there any conversation around a way out, right? And I know retirement's probably not an option because understandably, he would be giving up $81 million or more on his contract
Right.
if he was to retire. But was there any conversation on a way out, or maybe negotiations that could possibly be happening between him and possibly a deal like Rendon? We've seen with Rendon. Like, was there any conversations on that realm?
There was not, and every time that we brought up, are you thinking about retirement, anything like that, it was carefully worded that was not an option right now. And I think that the carefully worded part is to make sure that people understand that, excuse me, everybody wants him to step away, and the money side, I get that, but that's not even a talk at the moment. One of the things that he said that I thought was really interesting today, because I asked him, I said, has there been any new discussions or talks now that we've got a new front office, now that we have a new regime? And he said that he literally met Paul and Josh today. It just met them walking through the door. And so I thought that was really interesting, that we're still not even at the point where we're thinking about, what does this really look like for the franchise moving forward? I'm sure that thought is there, but I don't think there's been deep conversations with Chris. I think it really was, look, we're going to put you on the 60-day IL. We're going to make sure that this isn't a distraction as Warren Schaefer wants to move this team forward. And that's it. I think that's the biggest thing that they want to do. I don't know that they can really do anything as far as the insurance or anything else right now. The biggest thing they can do is just make sure that the questions don't keep coming up all year about KB.
Yeah. You got anything on KB?
No, I think Kevin kind of just laying it out there for all the fans and all the media and everybody, just to say, hey, he's here, he's working on things. It's not what any of us wanted to hear today, but at the same time, it's like, all right, we need to get this out of the way in terms of talking about it. And I hope that, just for our sake, for your sake, for anybody that goes into a Rockies media room or goes to Coors Field, yes, it sucks, but at the same time, you got to move on from the situation. And they moved on from just about everything in the past couple of years, other than a few players. So why not just move on from this? And you can't really consider this being a part of the team anymore.
Yeah, this is the moving on. This is it right now. I mean, Shafe talked about it whenever he met with us later today, and he said, look, when KB's around, he can absolutely be a sounding board for the younger guys. Don't forget, some of these younger guys, we're pretty young guys whenever KB was winning that World Series with the Cubs. So it was still a very impressionable time for some of these young guys. And Shafe said, absolutely, these guys are asking him hitting questions. They're asking him about what those moments were like. So for all the bad that there is around there with KB, the last thing that Shay said about it today, and it's the last line of my article, is that we are going to support Chris Bryant in this clubhouse. And I know that may not be the thing that Rockies fans want to hear, but it's absolutely, again, back to the human side of this equation rather than just the player side as well.
Yeah, out of curiosity, before we wrap this up, do you know if he's staying in Arizona, or is he going back to how's that working? Is he going to be around the other players?
I think he'll be here for a couple of days. I think he'll be around. He does have a locker here, so I think he'll be here. Obviously they're all around me right now doing drills everywhere. If I could do the 360, you'd see Rockies everywhere. Obviously KB is not a part of that. KB's with the doctors. He's with the trainers. I know that's going to happen for a couple of days, that he'll probably be back to Las Vegas, and then I think we'll see from there.
Okay, sweet. All right, let's move on to some more positive stuff. You've been there. You've gotten to see some of these new Rockies players, or maybe new and improved Rockies players, hopefully, take the field for the first time, get some pitching outings in, get some at-bats. And what's been your biggest takeaway so far from the limited exposure you've had to this team over the last couple days?
So literally, as we're talking, it's the first team drill, and they just wrapped up the first team defensive drill. And I will tell you, I wish everybody could see how cool that drill was, because they had everybody on this field, and the way that it was cadenced out was fantastic. I mean, and that's just one of the little different things that I think we're all seeing down here at spring training, is that everything, now granted that was team, but everything is so much more individualized. Everything is much more broken down into smaller components. Like I'm looking here, there's 7 different fields being used right now. They've got smaller groups of guys, rather than just saying everybody's going to go hit or everybody's going to go field. No, it's really focusing on the individual guys and then moving them around to stations here. So, one of the things that the Rockies have been adamant about is that everybody can improve. This isn't just about seeing what the rookies can do or anything else. It is absolutely making sure that Britton Doyle can improve, Ezekiel Tovar can improve, and getting the most out of those guys. And they feel like that they've done that. So I think just the vibe that there is here is different than past spring trainings. There's not the loud music. There's not the loudspeakers. It's like a teaching thing. It really is. It's almost like a lab in some ways, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I remember we've talked to Shafe a bunch, and he's talked over and over about how he's like, spring training is going to look different this year, right? We're going to show up, we're going to be prepared. And I don't think it was much of a knock on the previous administration. I think it was more just him saying, like, I have ideas on how I can improve this. I have ideas on how I want to change this. So you're saying that you're noticing already, from you were there last year when you saw Bud Black, and how he ran spring training versus how Warren Schaefer's running spring training. Are you seeing noticeable differences between those two administrations?
Night and day. And again, not a knock on Buddy in any way, shape, or form, because everybody's going to do something differently. But also, one of the big things that I'm noticing here, and I talked to Chris Forbes, their director of farm, about this, is that they're taking the best ideas, like a lone Leishman who came from the Marlins, the guys who came from the Tigers, the guys who came from the Mets. They're taking all these best ideas from all these other camps and they're implementing them here. And so it really is this really cool melting pot of ideas from other franchises and what's worked well for them in the spring. And one of the other big buzzes that I've heard is we're not going to run our guys into the ground doing drills before the games start. We're not going to get out of spring training and be tired heading into the season. And so there's really a focus on, again, the individualized stuff, but it's also not going to be, we're not going to be here till 4 or 5 in the afternoon. It's going to be, we're going to get our work done and get out of here and you're going to rest. And so I think that's a big different mentality thing from the previous years as well.
Yeah. And I mean, look, a lot of these guys definitely, everyone out there needs to have big improvements in 2026. Speaking of big improvements, Zach Veen, probably the biggest improvement, at least body-wise. Is he as big in person as he looks on Twitter? Because my God, on Twitter, he looks like a monster.
If you had not told me that was Zach Veen, I never would have guessed that was Zach Veen. I'm telling you. And I seriously, when he walked into the clubhouse yesterday morning, I was just like, I'd seen the pictures, but it's still jarring to see the difference in him versus last year. And good for him. Honestly, good for him that good for the Rockies for what they've done with this as well. I think that's really very commendable. I've watched him. The one thing I'm really curious to see, and I've asked a couple of people, and nobody can give me a real good answer on this, is he's put on good weight. What does that do to that speed that we all knew Zach Veen for last year? And nobody can give me that answer yet. So I'm really curious to see about that. But I've watched him, against Sagano. I've watched him against some of the other pitchers. He's still finding his way at the plate. Let's just put it that way. He's still definitely finding his way at the plate, but it's still early in spring, and I think there's a lot of people out here that are cheering him on just for a number of reasons.
Well, I think it makes a lot more sense now to all of us that haven't seen him all off season why the Rockies just didn't dump him like they did a Warming Bernabel or something like that. They're seeing how he's transformed his entire body, and obviously some stuff behind the scenes that he's positively impacted his own life. And going into the spring training as a completely different looking player, but also feeling player. Now it makes more sense to Rockies fans and everybody of like, okay, now I know why they're going to hold on to this very highly touted prospect and not just kick him to the curb.
Yeah, there were so many questions last year, whenever he was taken off the Isotopes roster and he came down here to Arizona and everybody was trying to figure out, was it disciplinary? Were the Rockies finally tired of his showboating? What was it? And now we know the answer to that. And again, kudos to the Rockies for keeping that all behind the scenes while Zach was trying to get his life back together. But the thing that has struck me about Veen as well is that, if you were around him much last year, he was a guy that seemed very unsure of himself. It's weird to say that he was cocky, but also unsure, but he was. And he's walking around here like he owns this place now. He really is. He's got a different attitude. And it's not just because he's got purple hair or not just because, of exterior stuff. It's because I think inside he really feels like he's got it figured out. And I think that's a really cool thing to see.
Yeah. Well, last question before we have to say goodbye, Kevin.
Man.
I know there's so many different angles to watch at spring training. There's so many different people to watch, but who do you have your eye on specifically as someone that you want to see have a big spring training? Because there's a lot of guys on this roster that need to have a big 2026. I could name 10 of them right off the top of my head, but who stands out to you that you're like, hey, I'm really keeping my eye on this player to see how they perform at spring training?
So I'm going with a little bit of a weird one, okay? But it's Willie Castro. I'm really curious to see what Willie Castro is going to bring, how they're going to use him. You know, he did not finish last year well. His stint with the Cubs did not go great. So the Rockies have, 2-year deal. They're obviously invested in him. And I look at this a little bit like the Tyro Estrada deal last year, where everybody said this is a guy who could really make a difference in the lineup for us. A lot of people are saying that down here about Willie Castro as well. We know how the Tyro Estrada thing went. So hopefully, A, he stays healthy, but B, he also produces as well. So the Swiss Army knife, I'm curious to see what Willie Castro does.
Love it. Love it. Appreciate your time, Kevin. Thank you for jumping on. Go back to watching some baseball, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Good to see you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Kev.
Kevin Henry with the Denver Gazette. Always appreciate him taking the time to chat with us. We will, of course, talk more to Kevin as the weeks go on, since he's out there in Arizona hanging out in spring training. We got to hit our first break of the show. After the break, let's talk a little pitching, and we'll dive deeper into this whole spring training situation that's coming up next. Breaking news from Bet365. We are back, and it is sports betting season. I mean, there's never not a season for sports betting, but with the Bet365 app, using code DNVR365, they've got some pretty good deals for you right now. And we're almost at baseball season, but we're not quite there yet. So I was asking you before the show, are you jumping into Olympics betting?
I am.
While we wait?
I am. I hit a Martin Netchus anytime goal this morning. Shout out Martin Netchus.
Attaboy.
Avalanche just scoring goals all over the place. But tomorrow there is a game at 4:10 a.m. So you can wake up with money in your pocket on the Bet365 app. Germany is playing Slovakia. Germany is minus 115 on the money line. Take that. Germany, Leon Draisaitl, Tim Stützle, those guys have been balling out. Germany has to win in order to move on. So take Germany in the Olympics against Slovakia tomorrow, minus 115 on the Bet365 app.
Well, right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up. Use code DNVR365, deposit $10. Place a bet for $5 to get $100 or $200 in bonus bets. If your bet wins or loses, bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right. Also want to give a huge shout out to our friends over at New Built. New Built Restoration and Construction is an awesome company because they take care of you in sometimes your hardest moments, right? We know it's tough to talk about, but home emergencies happen, whether it's mold or fire damage, water damage, whatever it is. New Built Restoration and Construction is a company that is built on trust, and they are available for you 24/7. So if anything ever goes wrong in your home, they got you covered no matter what time of day or night it is. And they can help you with any project too, big or small, whether you're doing some renovations, restoration, construction, all of those different things. Fire damage, water damage, mold removal, repair services, commercial projects, and more. They have you covered. They are truly the best in the business, and they're also huge DNVR fans, so we love them for that. When that home emergency hits, New Built Restoration and Construction will be there at nubilt.com or call 720-903-4254. Again, that's 720-903-4254, and let them know that DNVR sent you. All right, back here on the DNVR Rockies podcast. I wanted to go back just for a quick second because I know we were talking with Kevin Henry about, from his perspective, the KB situation, but I'm still getting a lot of messages about two things. Why does he not just retire? Why does Chris Bryant not just retire?
81 million reasons.
81 million reasons. That's the short answer. And why don't the Rockies just cut him? And so, like you said, the answer to why he doesn't just retire is he would be giving up 81 or whatever's left on his contract, which I think is around 80 something million dollars. So that's why he's not retiring. The other part of that too is there are agents and lawyers and other people who have their hands in that money pocket in the remainder of his contract. So it's not as simple as just like retiring and kind of keeping your ego intact. It's like Scott Boras is probably in his ear saying, "Hey man, you're not allowed to retire," right? Like that you owe us $84 million for the rest of this contract. Like you gotta give us that money. So that's part of it. The other part is, why don't the Rockies just cut him? And the reality is they could. The Rockies could cut Chris Bryant and just, eat their losses and move on. They'd still have to pay him, But there's probably a lot of layers to this that we're not privy to with insurance on a contract of this size. The Rockies probably have insurance on that, but that insurance usually isn't very black and white. There's usually a lot of variables there, and so they have to be in negotiations. We were actually talking to Hank, who does the Broncos show, and he's very knowledgeable about how contracts work and all that kind of stuff. And he was saying there's probably negotiations that are happening behind the scenes between the Rockies and Chris Bryant's camp on whether or not they can use insurance money for parts of this, whether or not they can defer money with like the Anthony Rendon contract that we saw come down this year with the Angels. Like, there's all these moving pieces. So if the Rockies were to cut him today, clear up the roster spot, yeah, maybe that solves the problem today, but you handicap yourself from being able to have any negotiations down the road. So I just wanted to acknowledge that real fast, because I'm still getting a lot of questions on why don't the Rockies just cut him, or why doesn't he just retire?
Yeah, and deferring the money kind of seems like the right play. In Dinger's burner account saying could hand tie us going forward, but it's hand tying you enough now that if you defer some of it and spread it out, I think it's like having an Antonio Senzatella on your roster, or something like that. Yeah. Where he's not going to give you don't expect anything from him. You're not going to expect anything from him if you end up cutting him and just deferring some of the money or paying it. We can have a Chris Bryant day every year, like the Bobby Bonilla day, and just pay him his $1 million or whatever. But I think it's good that we're kind of getting past this now. There's no, we don't have to hear the Bud Black clip anymore of the veteran sluggers KB. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to hear about it on the radio locally when everybody starts getting into the Rockies like they do, late in March. We
don't have to hear the fans booing him every time he steps up to the plate once a year,
Exactly. Or worrying about what position he is on the roster. He's already on the IL.
Yeah.
He's
and like Luck says, you lose. You're right. There is a roster spot available because he's on the IL.
Yeah, so they don't have to deal with it for at least 60 days. Let's put it that way, and then we'll figure out a.
They'll put him on the 60-day IL again.
Yeah,
They just keep kicking the ball down the road. So it's a lot more complicated though. I get it. We all want this to be closed because there are so many. We have gotten closure on so many other things as this new administration, as this new organization has kind of unfolded this offseason. We've gotten to have closure on a lot of other pieces that were dysfunctional before that. And it feels like that's the one last piece that we're still holding on to. And unfortunately, we might have to hold on to this for a while. But so putting a pin in that, that's the last of the KB conversation. Hopefully for a long time. We can officially move on. But okay, pitching. Pitching is probably it's always the biggest conversation whenever you come into spring training for any team, not just the Rockies, but there's an especially heavy weighted feeling whenever you're talking about the Rockies because of how hard it is to pitch at Coors Field. And now we've got a new pitching staff and new pitchers. And so it bodes the question, how improved do you think this Rockies pitching staff is going to be this year? Because last year, if I can take you guys back literally 1 year ago, I remember having this conversation a lot. And I remember talking to people and saying, well, our pitching staff can't be worse, right? We're getting Antonio Senzatella back. We're getting German Marquez back, right? Like, we're getting two of our starters back from Tommy John, healthy again. And so it's got to at least improve from what we saw in the years prior to that. And that was obviously not true. So with that in mind, is there a world in which we see legitimate improvement this year from the Rockies pitching staff, or is this going to be just another kind of toss-away year where we figure out what works and what doesn't, and we just move on?
Well, I do think there's an element at play of between Quintana and Shigano, the veteran starting pitchers they signed, 36, 37-year-old guys coming off. I mean, Quintana's coming off a couple of really successful seasons and pitching pretty well for the Brewers. And you got Shigano, who first year in the MLB last year, obviously gave up the most home runs of any starting pitcher in the MLB. But like I said earlier, or on one of our emergency pods, he was 10-5 with a 3.2 ERA at some point. So, and are these numbers going to move mountains and talk about Cy Young? No. But when we're talking about, I'm going to say this 1 million times this year, and here's the first one, raising the floor. That's what they did by bringing in a couple of veteran pitchers and guys. Well, and we forget Michael Lorenzen because they signed him so long ago, but bringing in 3 veteran pitchers to raise the floor of this team and make the guys fight for a rotation spot. And something I saw that was interesting, obviously we know, I was going to ask Kevin about this, but I think we know the answer to this. It's a rhetorical question. When the Rockies brought in Shigano and Quintana to pair with Lorenzen and Freeland, they're basically telling us, and I want your opinion on this, they're basically telling us there's one rotation spot up for grabs, right? Because they're not going to pay Shigano what they paid him and Quintana what they paid him to not be in the starting rotation. And there was a post from either Talkin' Baseball or something that was, posted about the Rockies. They got them out of the way early, get that, they're going through every team. And they showed the starting rotation of Freeland, Lorenzen, and then I believe it was like Feltner, Gordon, and Senzatella or some combination of that. And I was like, well...
And Dollander.
Dollander, that's it. Yeah. So theoretically, Feltner, Gordon, Senzatella, insert any name here. If you had to make the rotation today, it's in no particular order: Freeland, Lorenzen, Shigano, Quintana, and Dollander. That's it. And so what it does is it creates some depth at the AAA level, which they didn't have last year. Now, maybe they hit on one of the veterans. Maybe Lorenzen's good and Shigano continues to give up bombs and Quintana's just too old, right? Well, if Quintana and Shigano aren't that good, you've got Feltner there. You've got Tanner Gordon there. You've got McCade Brown, who's had MLB starts there. So there's some depth that they've built up where I don't think these 35, 36-year-old guys are going to have that long of a leash. But at the same time, those guys have been, when you're talking about better than the Rockies last year, those guys have shown that even if they're not world beaters, they're much better than the rotation that we rolled out last year. And then the injury bug hit, and then all these things happen, and you have, I believe, a 6.6 ERA and the worst ERA in the history of baseball as a staff. So they're raising the floor, but none of these guys are going to get Cy Young votes.
I think I saw Dinger's Burner in the chat said, if you can get through 4 innings, that's an improvement on last year, right? The bar is set extremely low. The reality is if you're not giving up 9 runs in the first inning like Senza did, then you're on the right track. But I think there's a world in which the Rockies starting pitching can get better, of course, and be better. I think you have the right minds in the organization to fix the problems that come up as they go, and to make adjustments and all of those kind of things. But the reality is, I don't think this is going to be by any means a good pitching staff yet. I think there's still a long way to go. You're compiling a bunch of either really young guys with really veteran guys, and none of them are really in their prime, right? The old guys are too old. They're out of their prime, and the young guys aren't even close yet. So that's where the Rockies are at right now. Now, hopefully we can see one of those older guys maybe kind of find a piece of their prime, right? If Lorenzen can find a way to work with his 9 pitches at Coors Field and gets a little, a boost from that, then maybe he can kind of come back down age-wise, in talent. And maybe Chase Dollander, like I see Uncle Ted in the chat says, Dollander was an ace on the road. If Dollander can start to figure out how to pitch at Coors Field and continue to pitch well on the road, he'll start to make his way up a little bit, right? So if we can get a little bit of that, kind of finding that middle, that's a good place where I want them to be. But like you said, the depth is definitely something that we didn't have last year. So yes, is this going to be an all-around good rotation? On paper, probably not. And don't forget that Shigano could also be a long reliever too. I mean, he could end up being another Senzatella. But you at least have options. And that's something that we haven't had. I think it was Lux in the chat said, we've, for years, it was just the most random people pitching. And I know some of it was injury related with Herman and all that kind of stuff. But it's you see all those random names coming out and starting the game at Coors Field, and you're just like, who are these guys? What are we doing? Now it's you have legitimate veterans who we don't really know how they're going to be, but they've had a successful career in Major League Baseball, and you have young guys who have talent, and you can kind of pick and choose who is having the better outings, and you can go based off actual performance, not just need. The Rockies have been living for years in a world of need. We don't have enough depth, so we need to play this person. We need to give Yanquiel Fernandez a start. We need to give Adael Amador a start at second base because we have nobody else. Now it's hey, we've got some options. We've got some competition that can be out there that can raise the floor, like you said, to be a little more competitive.
Yeah, and I think really the biggest key of this year is it will. You said it perfectly. You got nobody in their prime right now in the starting staff.
No.
You've got rookies, you've got young guys, and you've got super old vets that have been around for a long time. And we've mentioned this a couple of times, and I think we'll continue to use it throughout the year if we're really watching games and paying attention to pitch mixes and what they're doing. This is a test. This is a test for how pitching, because combining Alon Leichman and Matt Daniels and all these guys that they've combined on the pitching side of things, they have ideas, but the ideas have to actually be put into motion. And I think that's why they went out and got multiple veterans who are, at 36, 37, Quintana and Shigano are like, they're at the end of their careers, right? So they're not worried about, like, yes, they still want to be, as they signed contracts and are getting paid millions of dollars to play baseball, but they don't, if the pitching staff wants to go a certain way with them, they're not going to be like, oh, this is going to ruin my career. No, their careers are done essentially. So they have the opportunity to test different things and find out what works, because in theory, you can say, oh, sinkers work here, or breaking ball, this breaking ball works, or this fastball works. But until it's actually put into motion for a full 162 game season and test it out, you're going to have some real live data there to see what does work and what doesn't.
Yeah, I love it. I see, I think it's Lefty who changed his name in the chat. Closers could be really decent. Yeah, let's talk about closers, because that's going to be a big conversation coming up in 2026. So we're going to pause for our next break. After the break, who's going to be the closer for the Colorado Rockies next year? Let's have that conversation coming up. Also want to give a huge shout out to our friends over at Toyota. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR, and Toyota has been a part of our DNA for a long time. Spencer and I, we are avid Toyota drivers. We've been driving Toyotas. I've been driving Toyota as long as I can remember. Did you start on Toyotas as well?
I started on another brand, but have been in Toyotas for the better part of a decade, and until I die, I will have only Toyotas.
You can't go wrong. I mean, they've got so many different types of options, so many different choices, whether it's the all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. I was up in the mountains the other day, actually, driving my RAV4, and it got a little dicey. There was some snow up in the mountains, but Toyotas are built to last, and they are great, great vehicles no matter what the weather is. So if you are in the market to buy a new Toyota, visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson's Toyota Eastern Aurora, and Stevenson's Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR. Let's go places. Also got to give a huge shout out to our friends at Xfinity. Xfinity is the place to go for your intelligent, reliable Wi-Fi. We've had Xfinity Wi-Fi at home for years. It was the first company we went to when we started having to buy our own Wi-Fi, and there's a reason for that. They're the best in the business, and we've really never had any problems with Xfinity. And even when there are little hiccups, right? Maybe you have an outage in your area or something like that happens. Their customer service is incredible, and they've gotten us set up here at the DNVR studios with incredible Wi-Fi. It's why you always have great streams, clear streams going for you on your podcasts and on YouTube. But right now, they have the cool Xfinity 5-year price guarantee, which means if you lock in your price today, that is the same price that you will get on Wi-Fi for 5 years. You're beating inflation. You're beating all the money markets. That is a great deal. So lock in your price, unlock the possibilities with Xfinity. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Xfinity, imagine that. Select plans only. Restrictions apply. All right. Continuing on with our DNVR Rockies podcast. Closers. And by the way, Uncle Ted, you're not wrong. You do have to have a lead to have a closer. But assuming that, at some point throughout 2026, the Rockies will have a lead. The Rockies will at least maybe not in the month of April.
Maybe May, it's a May thing.
Yeah, maybe we have to wait to May. But they'll get a lead at some point in the ninth inning. And who do they call? Who comes in from that pen? We know Zach Agnos kind of took over that role a lot last year, and then he got hurt. Seth Halverson was in that role. Victor Vodnik was in that role. Hell, we had Angel Shiviji, who's no longer even on the team, taking that role as well. What's your thoughts? Who, if it was your choice, just based on what you know previously, not what we've seen in spring training yet, we don't know what that's going to look like, but from what you've seen in the past years, who's the closer in your eyes?
Seth Halverson. Seth Halverson is the closer. Victor Vodnik is if you have a perfect game where your not perfect, but your starter goes 6 innings. Okay. Miraculous, right? Yeah, Rockies almost perfect. You go, and it's everybody's had their days off or had their time. You go Jimmy Herget to Victor Vodnik to Brennan Bernardino. If there's a lefty in there, there's a lefty matchup you need to exploit, and then you go to Seth Halverson. That's how it should look.
I feel good about that. If your starting pitcher can get you 6 innings on the Rockies, giving up, let's just say 3 runs. Okay, keep holding the 3 runs through
quality
6
start.
innings.
We love
solid quality start. I feel really good about Jimmy Herget, Bernardino, Vodnik, and Halverson to round out the rest of the game as your options. That's actually. I would take that in the playoffs today.
100%. And we've talked about...
Not the rest.
We've talked about how good the bullpen has been. And granted, it sucked last year because I want to say it was Victor Vodnik that gave up the walk-off home run game 1. Yeah, and you're immediately down on him. And then he was hurt. And then Seth Halverson came in and was he just looks like a closer, which is a huge L or a huge dub for us. You know, just like a guy that rolls out and looks like that.
Him and RJ Pettit.
And then you have other guys that can mix. I mean, Zach Agnos was the closer last year. I'd have to look through I think Tyler Kinley got some saves. Like the Rockies had like 7 or 8 dudes get saves last year.
Closing by committee.
Yeah. So we don't want to have that. Good teams don't have that. Good teams have good bullpens. And that's one of the starts where it's like, if you can have a really good bullpen, number one, potentially flippable guys at the deadline, which is a huge deal. But number two, it will allow you to win more. You know, if you have some games where your starters are good, then you're not putting as much pressure on the offense, which there was pressure on everyone last year. There's pressure on the offense to score enough runs. And then when the pitching had pressure and you didn't score enough runs, they would implode. Like that's how you get to 43 and 119. Like it's easy to see that nobody really performed up to their level last year. But I will chalk up a lot of last year to some injuries that happened. The roster wasn't great. Front office obviously wasn't that great. But there was a lot of injuries, and the bullpen got really struck with those injuries. And I'm glad to see Halverson even pitching.
Yeah,
like thought, I was like, shit, because it happened later in the year. I was like, we're not even going to get Seth Halverson next year. But Vodnik, Halverson, Herget, Bernardino, RJ Pettit's in the mix there. You got Senzatella as your long inning relief guy. Like I feel like they have the bullpen is the strength of the Rockies if there is a strength.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 1,000%. When we were in winter meetings and we were talking to other media from other teams, they were like, we're interested in the Rockies bullpen, right? Like it's kind of a little bit of a mine, a little gold mine that the Rockies have going on there. That's just underrated because people look at the rest of the Rockies and say, everything else sucks. So you would think that the bullpen would suck too, but the bullpen's actually pretty good.
Right, they get discredited everywhere.
Yeah, which is of course. It's the Rockies anti-bias.
I get it.
Yeah.
But it also, if you really look at the team, or you're not just a national writer that has to look at the Rockies for one game and see, who God knows what. If you watched any game last year, you probably saw something not good from a good bit of the Rockies team. But if we're going to be realistic about the situation, the bullpen is, I would put them up there with a lot of. I mean, they don't have this dominant 10-year closer that's coming in with a veteran presence. But Jimmy Herget had about as good of a year as any reliever last year, not just Rockies reliever.
No, yeah.
And then you've got other guys around that throw heat, and it's a good mix
Tons
of
of potential, right? Yeah. Halverson, Vodnik have huge potential. Juan Mejia is another name in that mix. So what do they have to do? What does each individual have to do to get to earn the closer role? Well, Seth Halverson, I see you guys already talking about it. It's got to be his accuracy, right? He has closer ability. I think he has the best closer potential. But you never know where his pitches are going to go, or at least you didn't, right? Sometimes he was painting the corners and he was on, and then the next outing he went out there, he was throwing the ball to the backstop, and you're just like, oh my God, what's happening, right? So you need consistency, and you need to see some command from Seth Halverson. And then for Vodnik, I was the most impressed by Vodnik's improvement last year. If there was a most improved player last year, it had to be Vodnik, because Vodnik, he went from being Seth Halverson, where he was leaving balls over the middle of the plate and or missing the strike zone a lot, and he was kind of in his head, to being by and large the best closer on the Rockies. I mean, he was consistent. He can pump 100 just like Seth can. He's got good off-speed stuff, and he was hitting his locations. And I was very impressed with Victor Vodnik at the end of the year. Now what I need to see from Vodnik is, can you do that year in and year out? Can you not fall off at the beginning of the year? Can you have that consistent arc where you continue to get better, you continue to grow? If we see Vodnik continue to do what he did in the end of last year, I think he gets the start at the closing role, at least initially. But I do think Halverson probably has the higher ceiling, just because dude can throw like 103 with some nasty off-speed stuff. He just needs to get the command around. So those are the two things that will solidify either of those guys in that role. It's the consistency and longevity for Vodnik, and it's just the command for Seth Halverson.
Yeah, well, and part of me wonders if the Rockies will go to if the Rockies this year, with the testing mode that it seems like they're in, right? We've talked to the starting pitchers, and they're talking about all these wacky ideas, and the bullpen has kind of been a question for a long time. Like the Rockies bullpen used to be the absolute worst. They blow so many leads that it literally in me created the frustrating losses segment, because I could just watch the Rockies take a lead and then their bullpen would come in and blow it. So they've built that up and built it a lot through, other than Bernardino being the trade, they've built it up a lot through just homegrown talent and guys they've brought up through the system. And that, you can look at that as a positive or you can look at that as a negative. but the guys have got to the major leagues and had some flashes of being, something that you want to see out of your bullpen and guys that are shutting guys down. And I'm curious if they even name a closer, if you will.
Yeah, they might not.
It'll be curious to see if Warren Schaefer just kind of goes by feel. He's learning as he goes too. This is his first full year as a manager in Major League Baseball and not being an interim manager. So it'll be interesting to see if he's learned some of the late inning moves that kind of had us scratching our heads last year, if he changes some things there, or if they just go with the hot hand and go like last year. It was literally the guys that were closing were because they were the healthiest guys that were pitching the best, other than Herget, because he's just such a interesting, like he came in the 5th inning, he come in the 8th inning. Like he was so versatile and can move around and strike guys out and just get out of insane jams.
Yeah.
So Halverson's going to be there. Agnos could be there. Victor Vodnik could be there, but I wouldn't be surprised if like they start with Halverson, but they have a very short leash on a guy like that. Like if he blows a save on opening day, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Victor Vodnik in the 9th inning the next time they have a lead, which, could be the next day, could be a month from then, whatever it ends up being. Yeah. But it wouldn't surprise me if they kind of go with a hot hand and don't necessarily name not just a starter or not just a closer, but this kind of goes for most of the roster. The other guys that you can't pencil in, like they're not going to say Blaine Crim's our definite first baseman for the whole year. There's a lot of these guys are going to have fairly short leashes and they're going to be pushed by other competition where there's no solidified spots coming out of spring training. Yeah.
And Mr. Purple asked, why is Herget not the most improved? I mean, more of like within the season. Herget was most improved like year in and year out, but like Vodnik from where he started at the beginning of the year to where he ended at the end of the year was good. Herget was pretty much good the entire season, if I remember correctly. I mean, we didn't really realize it at first because we didn't know what
throwaway. He was another Rockies throwaway sign. We saw, you got a middle reliever for $3 million a year that's 32 years old.
Yeah, dude, cool. He was a nothing to me last year, at the beginning of the year, and then just became really good. But also, Dinger's Burner asks, is there any news of Jimmy Herget being a starter? I haven't heard of anything, and I think the fact that they went out and signed technically three, new starting pitchers from Quintana, Sugano, and Lorenzen, I don't see a world in which that becomes a thing anymore. I think that was a thing before when it was like, hey, we don't know what we're going to snag fish-wise in the starting pitching pool. And now that they've got 3 of them, there's no need for Jimmy Herget to be a starter. And Jimmy Herget's such a good reliever. Like I said, the fact that if we can honestly say you get through 6 innings of 3-run or less baseball, excluding anything the offense does, I feel confident with Herget, Bernardino, Vodnik, Halverson, and even Mejia in that mix that the bullpen can hold it down, and Herget's a huge piece of that.
Yeah, and I think there was a comment earlier from Luke that said, are we comfortable with Brendan Bernardino being the only lefty? Luis Peralta and Wellington Herrera are also lefties where it's not a great option. Bernardino's a guy you trade. Bernardino is like the first move of this new regime, essentially.
Yeah, but here, I'll tell you this story. So I was talking to Alon Leichman when we were having that dinner that one night, and I had asked him, I'm like, hey man, is there any like guy that you look at on this roster right now, this pitching staff, this 40-man roster for the Rockies that like stands out to you? And this is, again, Alon hadn't even met any of these guys. He's just talking from a film standpoint, all that kind of stuff. And he said Luis Peralta. And I almost did like a, really, dude? Come on. Like out of all the guys, not Halverson, not Vodnik, not Jimmy Herget, but Luis Peralta. But he like went on to explain, and he was just like, yeah, like he had his issues last year, and he definitely did. But he was like, but like when he's on, he's like, he's unhittable. And I don't know if you remember, and Alon mentioned this. He said, if you remember, there was that outing against the Dodgers, and it was in between all of the shitty outings that Luis had. But there was that outing against the Dodgers where he faced like Shohei, Mookie, and Freddie Freeman, and he went 1, 2, 3 in like 9 pitches. And he was like, that's what he's capable of. And he was like, and we're going to get that out of him. And I was like, okay, all right. Like you're going to make a believer out of me, but but deep down, I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. But Alon was very high praises on Luis Peralta.
All I remember from Luis Peralta is him allowing, I think it was Michael Busch in the Cubs series, a 3-run shot in the bottom or the top of the 9th inning. The Rockies ended up winning that game. But he allowed a 3-run shot after the Rockies. You're like, the Rockies are going to beat the Cubs. It's August, whatever it was. And you're like, this is fun. Like they started to win some games, be competitive. and he comes in and just gives up a dinger, and you're like, okay, yeah. I'm out on him.
It's recency bias, Lux. Luis has good stuff. Again, we've seen it. It's just he had so many bad outings, where it was like Spencer said, it was almost letdown outings, and then some of them would string together too, where he'd just give up home run after home run after home run, and you're like, bro, figure it out, man. So we'll see. I'm not closing the book on Luis Peralta, but speaking of closing the book, we got to take our last break of the show, but can we officially close the book on first base? Are we done talking about free agents at first base? We'll answer that question coming up. Well, I want to, for this break, I wanted to give a huge shout out to an upcoming event that we have. And I say upcoming, I mean, it's like 2 months away, 3 months away. But we got to start planning for it, because if you guys are diehard Rockies fans, which why the hell else would you be here if you're not a diehard Rockies fan? We got a sweet takeover coming up on May 3rd at 12 p.m. Who are they playing? The Braves?
Atlanta Braves are in town. We're going to have a sweet DNVR suite all to ourselves, food, drinks. It's going to be awesome. We're not doing any party bus from the DNVR bar, just a smaller group of people, but it's going to be fun. I love the suite takeover. The Rockies suites, the Rockies may not do the baseball very well, but they do the baseball atmosphere extremely well. The suites are incredible. I'm going to try to eat 9 hot dogs, so come hang out with us and watch the Rockies play the Braves on a Sunday. Sunday games are the best.
Are you going to be bringing your newborn?
No, I think I will be alone for this one.
You don't want Stetson.
There's plenty of Coors Light in that booth. I want to enjoy that without having to worry about.
How old does he be? Like 2 months at that point? Yeah. Bring him out to the Rockies game. Come on.
I'm going to bring him to a hella Rockies game. He just doesn't deserve a suite at his age.
Yeah, dude. I'm so excited. And then Marissa's going to be like 2 months away from, literally 2 months away from giving birth to our first. So yeah, I'll be counting down the remaining enjoyable moments of my summer at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Just wait until
on
July.
A timer. But come hang out with us May 3rd. Go to thednvr.com/events. You can find the Sweet Takeover in there. And come hang with us. It's going to be a blast. Mr. Purple, go and buy his ticket now. We love that. 999 challenge with DNVR Rockies. I will do it.
Yeah, don't tempt him.
I'll look like Zach Veen at the end of the game.
Yeah, dude. Yes, you will. Yeah, dude. I did the 999 last year. Oh, yeah? Yeah? Did you do it? Did you complete the 999?
I did, but I was dead for the next 3 days.
I know. My body doesn't recover like it used to, man. I don't know. I think I would die. Like, I think my body would go into a state of shock, and I wouldn't be able to recover from the 999 challenge at this point in my life.
Yeah, I couldn't do the real night, like the one Kale's talking about with the skiing, or like I looked at my snowboard in the garage the other day, and I'm like, I gotta fucking sell this thing. My knees are too bad. Like, there's no way I'm ever hopping on that snowboard again in my entire life.
Well, that's gonna be a good time. So come hang out with us. All right, first base. First base has been the topic of the offseason, and it's funny because, besides the fact that we've gotten all these new hires in the organization, but first base was the big like free agent spot where, from last season, we were talking about it like, are we going to get Paul Goldschmidt? Are we going to get Luis Arraez? Like, what are we going to get at first base? Turns out we're not getting nothing. Yeah, we're getting nothing at first base. And that's okay, because they did a lot of other things though. And we love that. We're glad, like we said, we're raising the floor. You're not changing the world here, but you're raising the floor. Did a lot of front office stuff, which obviously made up for a lot of it as well. But are we okay going into spring training, or going into the regular season, I should say? We're already in spring training. Going into the regular season without a true designated first baseman. Have you wrapped your mind around that in a good way, or are you still kind of wishing they would have done something?
No, you never know what's going to happen. I know there's still, I believe, the last few first basemen that were on the big board, if you will.
Yeah.
All the other sports talk about the big board, the free agent frenzy of all the players going. Like, there's a few more that got signed the last couple of days where it was like the Nathaniel Lowe's or whatever. You're like, okay, that's out. Isn't
Rhys Hoskins still on?
Rhys Hoskins is still out there. So I'm still holding up hope just a little bit. And I'm just holding up hope because I feel like it's just such a glaring need in my eyes that it'd bum me out if they didn't go get a legitimate player. But as you looked at, we've seen through the comments, not just Lux's last comment, but TJ Rumfield, like, look at that. Gold Glove, Rumfield is a monster. Then you've got Krim, you've got Johnston, you've got potential of Charlie Condon if he goes dummy in spring training.
It's not going to happen.
I know, but I'm going to still stay excited for that because we don't know what the fuck's going to happen.
Dude, he could win spring training MVP and they would still start him in AA. Is my take.
Yeah, you're probably right on that. But I do believe that it's It's at least doing, if we're going to look at this in the positive purple glasses light, it's creating a serious amount of competition. Because
for sure.
It'd
be a good problem to have if Charlie Condon went off in spring training.
Right. But we could ask Thomas Harding. We could ask Patrick Lyons. We could ask Patrick Saunders. We could ask Kevin Henry. I bet you if we ask them who the starting first baseman is, we may get 3 or 4 different answers.
We probably would.
And that's not necessarily if that's fun or that's a way you want to go at a place where when Todd Helton carried the torch here for, I think 17 years, you're like, we got our first baseman. We know who it is coming out of spring training. So it's a little different for us diehard, longtime Rockies fans. But there's guys with potential to win the job. I mean, Blaine Krim, who if I had to put my mortgage on it, which I already have one mortgage on the Rockies over 52.5 wins. So I have another mortgage that I'm going to put on who it's going to be. I'd say Blaine Krim in Miami, the 27th or whatever. Yeah. But they also have lefties, that which maybe factors into it too. If you got a righty starter, maybe you give one of the lefties a shot. So it's an interesting. I'm going to hold out hope for Rhys Hoskins, but the second Rhys Hoskins signs, I'm over wondering if any of the other guys are coming here or what they're going to do. I'm just going to allow the competition to take place, which is one thing we needed. We need, not saying that all these guys are even going to be all-star level players, but let's just let them compete, and whoever's the best will start in Miami come late March.
Dude, I'm shocked. The chat is on fire for TJ Rumfield. And Uncle Ted's right. He was blocked by Ben Rice up in New York. And so it's like if you get anyone from the Dodgers, right? If you go get a prospect from the Dodgers, the odds are that prospect's been, sitting there kind of probably having some success in the minors, but you just, how are you going to go bump Freddie Freeman from his role, those kind of situations. So Rumfield could be a good option. I see Lefty says, is Krim a Tolia in the making? I like Blaine Krim. We've said we've had high praise for Blaine Krim on this show, but I realistically think you're probably right. I think Blaine Krim is probably another Michael Tolia. Maybe a little more consistent, maybe a little more willing to adapt. That was Michael Tolia's kryptonite, even in the conversations I had with him and from talking to other people and coaches and stuff. He was unwilling to adapt, at least in big ways. Seems like Blaine Krim is a little more willing to adjust and make those adjustments if he's struggling. But I think the reality is his identity is a home run hitter who has big swings and doesn't really get on base unless he's hitting home runs, right? He's a home run or bust type of player. Now that guy can be good in your lineup depending on the situation, but if you're talking long-term contracts, long-term, sustained success, Blaine Krim's probably not that. All right, testing. Better?
We're back.
Are we back?
Chat, are we back?
Chat, are we back? Thank you for letting us know if we were. Looks like we're getting audio on your side, Kale?
Yes.
Okay. There's still no audio? Sounds like?
Should be back.
Says it on there?
Says it on the levels are going through.
Okay, levels are going through. Nope. Silence like Polia's bat. Fixed. Back. All right, we're back. We're good. Okay. Sorry for the bit of a delay there. We're getting some new stuff. It works. We're good. Okay. So what were you saying?
I think I was talking about just the fact that you may be kind of like we talked about the closer role a little bit. There may be some competition there within the season of like, we know Warren Schaefer, much to our chagrin sometimes, would throw out a different lineup every game. I think that's what we might see at first base.
Yeah.
One day it may be Blaine Krim hitting 7th. He hits 2 home runs. The next day it's Blaine Krim hitting 3rd. He strikes out 4 times. The next day it's Edward Julian hitting 5th.
I'm with Lux though in the chat. I think you were saying earlier. He's like, I still don't know who Blaine Krim is. Like that's how I feel with Blaine Krim. I'm like, I feel like he could be good. I mean, he was great last year for the 5 seconds that we saw him, but then we could see the holes in the swing at times, but we just need more sample size. So it continues to go back to everything we've been saying, which is that this is a learning year for the new front office. Hell, I mean, you hear what Michael Lorenzen is talking about. He was talking to media, I think, a couple days ago, and I posted this clip, and he was talking about how like he's so excited to tackle pitching at Coors Field at elevation, like try to crack the code. And so many people have tried to do that, but like it's just so fascinating to see this entire organization from the players all the way up to the front office approaching this like we're just going to try to figure this out, man. Like what's the harm? We're probably going to lose 100 games anyways. Realistically, there's a chance that happens again. So why not just go try to figure this out? And 2027, we're probably not even going to have baseball. So let's just throw things at the wall and see what works. Let's see if we can find a first baseman hidden in our organization somewhere.
Mr. Purple is going to the game Friday.
Jealous.
Tell us who. Well, I think the game's on TV. I will be in the hospital I will not be having the child, but my wife will be having the child Thursday, Friday for sure. So I will be in the hospital on my computer streaming the Rockies. I'm sure she'll love that. That'll be great.
Dude, I thought for a second, Marissa and I, my wife and I thought that your baby was due Monday, yesterday. And I'm sitting there like, is Spencer going to be doing the show from the hospital with us? I'm like, I'm sure Kylie would love that. But
yeah, she's going to love the Rockies' first spring training game on my computer. I might try to get it streamed to the TV. We'll see what that situation's like. But Mr. Purple, keep an eye out for, if they actually put a legit lineup out there, keep an eye out for who's at first base. I think that's kind of the biggest question mark right now. Now, it's not the regular season, but it'll give you at least an idea of what they want to try there. And then one thing, talking about spring training and just kind of parlaying this into it. So as you guys know, the Rockies will be taking on Team USA March 4th. We'll be doing a watch along for that. We are going to watch the game with you. So come watch it, hang out with us. Let's watch as one Instagram account called it, the power of friendship versus Team USA.
No, dude, I still have faith. I think the Rockies can pull this one off. Team USA is going to be, they're going to be taking it easy. It's an exhibition game. And we were talking to Kevin before the show, and he was like, knowing Warren Schaefer's going to probably try to go out and win it. He's going to want to make a statement out there. He might not go throw, Quintana 7 innings or something like that, 100 pitches, but he's going to go try to put a win together.
Yeah, I think he's going to, hopefully it's Lorenzen or Freeland, and then they go with some of the actual bullpen guys and give themselves a really good shot to, the game may get a little lopsided, but at least the Rockies will give it a shot, I think. And there's going to be a lot of national eyes on, there already is. And that game is a spring training game that's 2 weeks away, and there's already national Instagram accounts posting about it. So I'm pretty pumped for that game, and come watch it with us and chat with us, because I'm sure there'll be, you can't have an official crash out because it's still spring training.
No,
but I will have some mini crash outs, I'm sure, at some point, watching Aaron Judge and whoever else.
Cal Raleigh, dude. The Team USA lineup is insane. I'm just excited for the WBC to start in general, but the fact that it's happening against the Rockies just makes my heart so happy.
Yeah, that game we will be locked in, and I can't wait.
Dude, I'm gonna be watching that like it's the playoffs, man. Like I want this to be a win for the Rockies. So I'm excited. WBC's coming up in general. I know Shigano just got out with Shohei and Team Japan. Apparently, I think I don't know whose article I was just reading. It was the Denver Post saying that Shigano is like excited to be teaming up with Shohei Ohtani, which of course, why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
But I just think the WBCs, it's cool because you get these opportunities to just play with different guys on different teams. And it gives us the chance to watch some real baseball, man. Like I'm just so excited to watch real, actual, legitimate baseball.
Yeah, and I think when we originally talked about it, it was 10 Rockies were in the WBC. Now it's up to 12 with the additions of Quintana and Shigano. So we actually have some Rockies rooting interest in the WBC, and it'll be great if we get to see, Shigano was the ace for Japan and won MVPs in Japan. I'm not saying he's still that guy. He's 36 years old, but it'll be fun to see those guys as Rockies compete, just like it's fun for me right now watching Olympic hockey, not because it's just Olympic hockey, but watching Nathan McKinnon kill it and Makar and those guys. Like, it's fun. So I'll feel the same way about the World Baseball Classic because we get to see some of our own guys.
Yeah, excited. I'm excited. Well, you guys have been awesome. Thank you for working with us on that little audio cutout. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We'll be back live again next week, same time, unless there's any news. And of course, we always do our emergency pod if there's any news. But if not, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the DNVR Rockies podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.